in just a moment. We also have additional layout tools here. We have a level, and of course this is made of titanium, so it is quite expensive. Because it's so inexpensive, this is the square that should be in everybody's bags. Until about 5 years ago, I did not use them. So for 25 years, until about 5 years ago, I did not use them. So for 25 years, on. Crickets, man. This is just not working. This video, we are going to show you the basics of how to use the speed square. This is in every framer's pouch. It's inexpensive, so we're going to get into what all of the markings are on it, how to use it effectively, a couple of tips and tricks. I'm going to show you the Swanson. I just bought this at Lowe's for like 12 bucks. When you buy it with the little blue book. It's worth it. The Swanson, because this is cheap, everybody will have this. They're very, I mean, you're 18 years old, first day on the job site, you're going to have one of these in your pouch. Don't get the plastic. Let's go over the basics. This is what the speed square looks like. Our ruler, Scribe Marks. That's 3.5 from the heel. This is a protractor. This is the ridge cut for common roof, the ridge cut for hip and valley roof. This is also measurements, and I'll show you how to use each one of those. So the most common thing I'm going to use the square for is just marking something to length and then squaring that cut. Let's just say I go 8 feet. Okay. The speed square is 7 inches, which is not by accident. That allows me to put 2 boards together and mark layout. Now if I'm marking layout, because my lumber is 1.5 inch thickness, when I have a king stud trimmer, I'm gonna mark one end. This distance here is 1.5 inches. This is half, this is half, 3/4, 1.5 inches. So I mark there, slide over, I'm lining up that edge. Now I have 1.5 inch marks for my king stud and my trimmer. Now I tend to like to lay out on edge, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to scribe up from the lines that are on the ground. Then I'm going to mark. This is 3/4, 1 inch, and right there's 1.5 inches with that slot. So I slide it over till I see it right there. King stud, trimmer. Okay, 80 by 96.
I think I went too high now. Huh?
And you notice that we have a ruler across the top, but let's just say you have a bunch of 6-inch blocks to cut. That could be a quick way to do it without pulling out your tape measure. Oftentimes we have intersecting wall layout. So let's just say, just for giggles, that that's our wall layout. I always like to lay out plates in place. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna line that up. I'm gonna mark here. And now I have 3.5 right there. I just line that up. And I have my partition for my California corner. Every little thing saves us some time. So by having that triangle there, 1 inch, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches, 2, etc., all the way down to 3.5. So as the user, we're always going to use our square this way. Sometimes we might use it this way, but essentially the parallel edges are where the heel goes. Another thing to show you is all of the scribe marks. So if I need to rip something or just scribe, let's say I need 1 inch, then I just put my pencil right here and I scribe. If I need 2.5 inches, scribe. Say if I need 4.5, scribe. So if you look closely, you can see I have 1 inch and 1 1/4 inches. Right here in between is 1/8. So if I needed, let's just say 1 7/8 inches, it'd be this guy. So I'll just go 2 7/8 inches. Yeah, right there. That is really handy. Now, when I first started, we didn't have Scribe Marks, and so we just learned to do this. I would rest my fingers and I would angle my pencil. So there's 2, say if I needed 3 7/8, 3 7/8. If I needed 4 1/2, I would do that. Of course, the Scribe Marks are a lot easier. Okay, notice that the square says pivot, and it aims right here. There's just kind of a little bit of a groove. Let's just say I have a mark here. I'm gonna align the pivot. Now, if I wanna draw a miter or an angle across the board, I pivot it. And notice, see how this changes. So there's 3 different scales here. This is our protractor, and it's just degrees. This set of lines right here, that represents our common scale. So if your blueprints tell you that it's an 8/12, then you're gonna cut the 8. I'm gonna show you the hip valve, but you're not gonna need it that often. You're gonna use this most often and this most often. And then I'll show you the hip valve here in just a moment. So let's just say that we have an 8/12 roof. There's my tick mark. I'm gonna pivot it on that until the 8 is on top of the board. So we see the 8 right there, and we see the pivot point. We can also get degrees. It's about 33.5 degrees. So I'm gonna mark that. If I made this cut, then this is what would nail to the ridge. Let's just say that you needed a 40-degree angle off of the pivot. Then I'm gonna pivot this until the 40 is on top of the board. Same edge, I'm gonna mark this face. That's a 40-degree angle. Okay, let's get into how to cut a rafter. If I have, let's just say an 8/12 roof, I'm gonna pivot it until I have 8 at the top, and I'll mark that angle. That's an 8/12. Let's just say I need to go 16 inches. So I mark 16 across the top. Pivot point right there, 8/12. Now I have 2 parallel cuts that are both 8/12, and when these are in place, they're going to be vertical. But what about my Birdsmouth? Well, notice that I have my 8/12, and let's just say I want my seat cut or level cut to be exactly 3 1/2. I'm just gonna rotate this around. I'm gonna line up this point and this point with my line until I get to 45. Slide that down. Right there, I have a exactly 3 1/2 inch level cut. No math, didn't need to know the height above the plate. I'm gonna have bearing. The other way you can do that is if I mark an 8/12 and I just line up the diamond with this mark here. So it lines up there, there, and my pivot point is tight there. Well, that's obviously 3 1/2. Is it square? It is square. Okay, let me show you a trick with these to get some angles with no math. If I mark square and I go to 8/12 and I mark that, if I return the square right back to its position, then I know my complementary angle right there is just a little under 57 degrees, and I had to do no math. If I was doing that with my calculator, let's say 8-inch pitch twice, my plumb cut is 33.69 degrees, minus 90 is 56.31. You know, I would just round that to 56 degrees, 56 and 34. Okay, so here's our rafter, and I have an 8/12, so that is my plumb cut. But let's say that I have a board that runs right into the rafter, and now I need this angle. I can do exactly the same process with one change. I would mark to the sharp, and instead of rotating this to the 8, which gives me a plumb cut, is I would mark an 8, get it right close to that. I would mark an 8, and then I just rotate this and mark it. That is now my seat cut, 56 1/2. That's about what our math said, 56.3 something. So that's our seat cut. So let me go ahead and cut this and I'll show you how that would work. I like a loose base plate for a longer cut. So that would be our seat cut. And if this was the rafter, so this board is level, this board is plumb. See how that fits? And of course, that's our level line, so this is parallel. So that's how we get a seat cut without having to do any math. So let me just show you a couple things on this square that to me make it special. I love all the additional scribe marks. They're a little deeper for the most common ones, like 1.5 and 3. And then they alternate between the two in 1/8 inch. So if I was at 2 1/4 there, I could be at 2 3/8 there. I also have scribe marks across the top coming out to here. You know, I skipped from 4 1/2 to 5. That's probably not, I can't even think of a time I've ever scribed 4 3/4. But anyway, what's nice is like if I need to go exactly 5 1/2, then I can use that mark there and mark 5 1/2. See, there's my 5 1/2. I also have a deeper scribe mark here for 5 1/2. So there's that. What? Okay, here's another feature I like about the square. Let's say that my wall dog legs at 45 degrees. Well, in order to do that, with my plates, I'm gonna miter them. So that's 22 1/2 degrees. So let me show you why I like this square for this. If I need to miter, I could come over here and count 20, 21, 22 1/2, or notice this slot here. So if I just go right to here, align that and mark it, I have my 22 1/2. And now, there's how my plates would be. And of course, I would lay out and I would have a stud there. And I would have a stud here. Oh, I have blocks. Oh! And they would fit in just like that. That's how that works. So is that a big deal? You know, if I have this square and I was gonna do the same thing, then I would just probably go right about there and I would mark it. But it's just something that I like. Goes right to there, just line them up, bam. And this just to me is a little more accurate than trying to count inside there. Does it really matter? No, not as a framer, because our stuff gets covered by drywall. Using a square, no math, I can figure out complementary angles. I'll show you how that works. So I mark 90 degrees. Remember, complementary angles sum to 90 degrees. So then if I go with a 10-12, so 10 right there, if I just put the square back in its spot, I have just a hair over 50 degrees. Well, 50 and the 40 equal 90. A 10-12 roof is actually 39.81 minus 90 is 50.19, and I am just a tick over 50. Of course, in framing, we would just go 40 and 50. Let's do another one. Let's do a 6-12. So I mark square, go until my 6 is on the top. I go right back, and I have just a little bit under 64. So 6-inch pitch, hit twice, 26.57 minus 90, 63.5 degrees, and that's right exactly what I have. Let's just say off the center, I'm gonna go the same. So there's the 5, so that's a 4-inch radius. I want to keep pressure this way, and I'm gonna find the scribe mark that's closest. There it is, a perfect circle. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching the video, but let me just address one thing you're probably thinking of. If these squares basically did the same thing, is it really worth the money for the Martinez titanium? Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you no. And yes. Go out and buy one of the Swanson squares. Almost everything I ever built was with one of these. There's some other squares out there. You could try those out. Jared Kaufman has got a nice review of a bunch of the squares. I'm a huge fan of this guy. This is what I would buy for everybody that's brand new on the crew. Now, having said that, I also think it's worth owning this. Only after you have mastered this. 25 years in before I went with this guy. Mark sent me a prototype, and then this bad boy is my Signature Series Titanium Martinez square. If this was stolen from me right now, I would immediately get online and buy another one. It doesn't do anything that the other squares don't, but with some minor exceptions. It makes certain things easier. That is not what makes this square worth owning, in my opinion. This is a gift to myself after spending so many years here. I love how it feels. I love using it. I'm not kidding. Every time I use it and mark something, I just smile. Because this is just a thing of beauty. It's not just, it really isn't just function, but it's form. It is just gorgeous. And so for that reason, if I have to use a tool every day, then I'm going to spend the money on it, and I am not going to justify it to you or any of you. I don't smoke. I don't chew. I do spend good money on whiskey, but I don't drink it very much. See, I'm a big fan of spending good money on something, but not having 1,000 of it. So I'm not playing video games. I don't chew tobacco. I don't smoke. I don't vape. I don't smoke weed. So I just take all of that money and I put it into my square. The difference is this thing will last long enough for my grandchildren if I was to have them. But I'm not going to die. My consciousness will be transferred to a Tesla robot, and I will be using this square for like the next 9 centuries. Let's hope my build shouldn't last that long. Anyway, thank you very much for following along. I hope you learned something. This is just an introduction to how to use the square. Like they always say on the build show, know better, build better. So we will see you all in the next video. Okay. That triangle there. These are all in increments of 1/4 inch. So I have 1 inch, inch and 3. Let's see. 1 inch, inch and 1/4, inch and 1/2, inch and 3/4. In just a moment, we also have additional layout tools here. We have a level, and of course, this is made of titanium, but it is quite expensive. I'm going to focus in this video on the Swanson. Because it's so inexpensive, this is the square that should be in everybody's bags. Until about 5 years ago, I did not use them. So for 25 years, until about 5 years ago, I did not use them. So for 25 years, on. Crickets, man. This is just not working. On. Crickets, man. This is just not working.